It's not that many people, that's good. I like that. So for those of you who haven't heard of me, I assure you I'm extremely famous. Alright, okay, so if you haven't heard of me or Brotip, you're probably wondering what exactly a Brotip is. A Brotip, in short, is a little piece of advice or motivation or observational humor or word definition. For example, advice, motivation, observational humor, and or a definition. So maybe you have seen these before, but you didn't know like where they came from or who made them. That's me. I made them. They came from my dorm mostly, and or you don't know how they came to be. I started Brotips, I want to say 3 years ago. I think it was like March of 2011. I was a freshman at Emory. I thought I was pre-med, which I totally was not pre-med at all. Everyone always says I started out of my dorm room, which isn't true. I started out of Douglasville, Georgia, where I'm from, at my grandparents' house. And I ran out of my dorm room a little later. A little backstory about me, I was raised entirely by the internet. I was a mistake and my parents were negligent. and they kind of left me to my own devices. And so, like being on computers like my entire life gave me a pretty good understanding of internet culture, like what's popular, what's going to be popular tomorrow, why it's popular. But the internet is just a medium and it's made up entirely of people. And so knowing internet culture is pretty much just knowing culture. So fast forward to when I was 19, to start at Emory, and I met like a lot of douchebags here. I met a lot of douchebags at Emory. And so I started tweeting like observations about people that I saw, like people that I met. And whenever I would tweet about them, I would always hashtag it pro tip, like with a P, pro tip. And so it'd be like pro tip, like playing guitar on the quad won't get you laid, or like why are you texting on a date? You can do that for free at your own house, or like whatever. And it was mostly meant to like entertain myself or like make myself feel better. And but they were actually pretty well received. And meanwhile, I also had a who knows what Tumblr is? There, Tumblr. Okay, cool. This is really easy. Okay, so if you haven't heard Tumblr, this is Tumblr, or this is the first page of Tumblr, and it's a microblogging website, which means like. It's kind of like WordPress, but not really. It's mostly made up of other people's blogs than your own. You can follow people. It's kind of like Twitter. You follow people, like what they post shows up on your feed, and then you can like reblog it or favorite it or whatever. And so I made my Tumblr like the same year I started college, and I have like, what, like maybe 30 followers, you know, like just like my friends. And I post things that I thought were interesting or thought were like funny or relevant, and like they got literally like 0 notes, like 0 attention, nobody read them, nobody cared. And it's because like they weren't really palatable for the Tumblr audience. Like Tumblr, they don't want to read like articles or things that like politics or whatever. Like Tumblr is mainly like knee-jerk, kind of like pituitary, reactionary things. And so like, here, I actually have things that are like perfect examples of what's popular on Tumblr. This. That's what's popular on Tumblr. like bits of angst, like ironically framed as like overly cute gifts from the early 2000s. Like that's what's popular on Tumblr. That's what's hot. There's like that. Emotionally frustrated song lyrics. Movie captions taken out of context to seem more profound than they actually are. Very obviously posed but nonetheless photogenic couples. Not picture, I couldn't find pictures of this, but basically social justice, fangirling, actual literal pornography, Lana Del Rey and odd feature gifts, fake privacy consciousness, and pictures of cats. That's what's popular on Tumblr. Not articles, not actual content, just reblogs. And for some reason when I saw like all of this, I thought, you know what would be really popular on Tumblr? My advice. That's what Tumblr would love. Advice from me, which sounds really stupid, but I just figured that like concise bits of advice that people can relate to would actually be like a good fit for Tumblr, especially if you put them in pictures that people can just reblog and not have to like actually read. Just like kind of like tweet-sized things. And Tumblr was actually a really good fit for the concept because Brotip's really needed to snowball. You kind of have to like get like 10 people behind it and 1,000 people behind it and like 100,000 people behind it for it to really work. Because it's kind of like the, not really confirmation bias, but kind of like groupthink, I guess. Like if you see a piece of advice and it has like 0 notes, you're not going to believe in it. But if you see somebody has like 30,000 notes, you're like, wow, that must be true, even though I think it's not true. And that's pretty much how Tumblr works. And Reddit, but that's like a different story. So Tumblr is like a super snowbally website. Once things kind of get going, they just like don't stop. And so it's just entirely built on momentum. And so if you're successful on Tumblr, you kind of have to ride that momentum. Nobody actually like makes content on Tumblr. Everybody just like logs on and reblogs whatever they see. And a lot of what I was posting was like at first it was kind of like relationship advice, things that like people could like anybody could relate to, like gender or like race, like none of that mattered because like everybody had gone through the same thing. It was just like your ex sucks, and people were like yeah my ex sucks, and they reblog like immediately. Like it was so simple. And because like if you put advice like eat your vegetables, like nobody like whatever. And so I mainly like posted the first Brotip for like the Tumblr crowd, which are like, you know, people like you and me, like you go to school, maybe you work a job, just, you know, like kind of like college age or high school age kids, or, you know. And so I basically took my tweets, my pro tips tweet, thought that I could make it visual, post pictures, make it easily shareable, and it would just like pop instantly. And so they weren't actually called Bro Tips at first, they were just called Pro Tips. And this is actually really funny. And so I went to Photoshop to start to like make my first one, and I made it. It was like pro tip number 1, whatever. And then I went to register protips.tumblr.com, and it was like taken. And so like a pro tip is basically the same thing as a pro tip, you know. It's just like a word people say. It's like pro tip, whatever, same thing. It's like if you have a friend named Joseph, you might call him Brosip. Like not that it really means anything. It's just like I'm just gonna put bro in here for no reason. And so pro tip is like a pro tip is like that. And so I was like, whatever, man. If pro tips is taken, I'll just call them bro tips. And that's like literally why they're called bro tips, is because pro tips was like taken already. So that was like probably the best possible thing that could have happened. Let's see. And so like I actually managed to, like, since it was kind of like a happy accident, I used that to kind of give the website a voice. And that's like a lesson, like some things will happen that you won't expect. You gotta have to like roll with it and then use it to your advantage. And so since like they were called bro tips, I couldn't like give actual advice. I couldn't be like bro tip, like invest in a 401k. Like that's like not bro tip, you know. So and so like calling them bro tips like kept me on track. Like kept me kind of like relevant to like the younger audience that I was trying to attract anyway, and just kept the whole thing trendy. And plus like bro and dude is like stuff that I actually say, and so it was like really natural to write like, you know, advice, comma bro, because it's like how I talk in real life. Let's see. So when I first made bro tips, I started like look kind of like this, which is like not what they look like now, but that was like the first like attempt at a bro tip that I did in Photoshop. And then I played around with it for a little bit and ended up with this, which is like how they still look today. Like the design of the first bro tip, like I never looked at design, I just changed the colors around. The premise of the design is that I wanted to keep everything really simple. I didn't want the image to distract from like the message, because it was like a content-driven idea. And so I used Arial because it was like literally like the most default font that I could think of, and it's not Helvetica, which I hate. And I like, yeah, you see like the tags in the bottom right, pro tip in the top left, and then like the tip in the middle. And that's always what it's gonna look like. But yeah, it was just one of those ideas that I knew would be popular from the very beginning, and I always trust my gut with things like this. Like, it's like this weird kind of mix of like marketing as well as like comedy as well as like actual advice. And so that actually brings me to how I run things, which is my infallible 2-part system to success. And this is how, like, if you do this, like, you'll be freaking rich. Like, this is all you have to do. What you have to do is make something that's actually legit. But the second part, which people forget about, is that you have to actually like get it in front of people. And so what happens is a lot of people are really good at one of those things, but not good at the other thing. Like you have a lot of like really flashy marketers or like design, look and feel kind of guys, but they don't really have much like substance to work with. And then you got a lot of like really smart people who know how to make something, but they don't know how to draw attention to the thing that they made. And so, so while it might sound kind of stupid, I guess is the word for it, it actually is like, you have to put a lot of thought into this because you have to put together a team of people that aren't really like heavy on one side of it. You have to put together a team that can do both things, which is like make something that actually works and like can put it in front of people that care about it. And so, I mean, I thought I had something great on my hands, so I did the first thing, but how do you get it in front of people on Tumblr when you have like literally 0 followers? And so the first thing I did was I asked like 10 of my friends, I was like, hey, can you go to this page, I'm gonna post like 10 things, can you pick like 3 or 4 that you really enjoy and share it to people? And I'm not sure, whatever, man. And so they went to Brotips and they picked like 3 or 4 of the first 10 tips, and they posted it that night. They reblogged it. They really didn't have that many followers to go. I think the girl with the most amount of followers that shared something, she probably had like 1,000. And so we shared it, and I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. Everybody did that for like 20 minutes, and I was like, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. Okay, and then it happened. And then the Brotip snowball happened. We had 1,000 followers the first weekend. Holy shit, that's stupid. Can you imagine getting 1,000 followers the first weekend you post something? And then like it just got crazier from there. We had 60,000 in the first 2 weeks, which is a significant number because that's twice the population of my hometown, and I hate my hometown. And so I was like really stoked about that. I was like, yes. I hate that place. And so, I say original Brotips page. I'll get to why I'm saying original in a little bit, but the original Brotips page peaked at 150,000 followers, and that was within like a month and a half, maybe 2 months. Actually, I think it was like a month and a half. And so there's no way I could have like done that by myself. And so after it just got crazy, I put together a team of my closest friends that were all really good at like different things. I'm not gonna like name drop them because some of them actually don't want to be named after everything was said and done, but we got one in the crowd right now. Jessica, wave. Wave, just wave. It's too late now. Gotta wave. Jessica helped me like from day one. She's been around doing the Brotips thing. She is like the feminine part of Brotips. And yeah, so I put together a team, and then we just, it got actually ridiculous from there. I decided to try to like legitimize it, because at this point, remember, it's just a Tumblr blog. Like, it's not a company, it's not even really a website, it's just like a blog. And so, I was approached by, I don't know if you guys know Nir Levy, he did the Emory Bubble, or no? Zishan, David from C, like a lot of people who were like really big in the Emory startup community, like approached me like, wow, this is really cool, man. Like I didn't know this came from Emory, like, and they gave me a lot of really helpful advice in like my first couple of months, which is really invaluable. They told me to just like get Google Apps and like make Brotips emails and like get a Google Voice number and do that whole thing. And we had so many fans that I started letting people submit their tips to me and just have me kind of like rewrite them and make them a little bit wittier. And so we had an entire day submitted to like fan tips, like not from me, but like from other people. And we had so many that we were posting like we did 5 tips a day, and we did 20 tips every single Sunday. It's because we had like hundreds in our box. So just people like saying like, oh, I want to make a Brotip too. We were the #1 humor and advice blog on Tumblr, which I don't know if like you guys have. Like people who have Tumblrs, like they used to have like a ranking system where they would split it into categories and then like kind of rank it by the amount of notes you got. And from the time we started to like the time they did away with the ranking system, like we were like #1 on comedy. I think we were #1 on advice for like probably 80% of those months. And back to like me saying original, we actually got hacked. Actually, let me just go to this. We actually got hacked, and they deleted like the original Brotips page. And when they deleted it, we made a new one, and like the #1 site was like original page, and the #2 site was like the new page. Like it was actually ridiculous. The first hack wasn't really a hack as much as it was like them literally just logging into Brotips with my password. I don't know how they got the password, but given that my password was like, I think it was bro your boat, it wasn't really the most secure. Like top 5 biggest regrets, making my password bro your boat. So they didn't do it, like they just logged in, they just changed our password, we couldn't log in for a little bit, and after a couple of days they just like wiped it for like actually no reason. And so our followers, like we had to start from scratch. Our followers went to 0. Like the notes, they doesn't really go to 0, but like you can still see like tips from the original page floating around. But like it'll say like bro tips dash like deleted number, and then like have some like crazy codes, and so like you couldn't really share it anymore. And so that like actually halted a lot of our momentum. Let's see. And so we had to rebuild and just start it all over again. We got all our followers back and then some by just making a new page and just like trying to message as many people as possible and just letting them know that like, okay, we're starting over. We posted all the tips that we had posted so far, like again, and just had people share them all over again. But people would share tips they already shared just like to show support that like they didn't want us to leave, they wanted to stick around. From there we started to expand some more. Like we started to do personal ads and not just Google ads. Like we actually partnered up with people. We partnered up with, I'm trying to think of the first guy I partnered up with was like this like Etsy shop owner that just like sold like wallets and like watches. And we made the first version of the Brotip app, which don't tell anybody, was just like going to brotip.tumblr.com, like that's what the app did. And Tumblr has a built-in mobile version, but we just like put that on the App Store as a Brotip app. Like stuck an ad on it, and like that was it. That was no source of revenue. Let's see. But yeah, like I think that like after the first hack was probably like the like peak of like pre-company Brotips. Like this was like when everything was just like exploding. Like every day was something different, and we actually didn't even realize how big of an impact like we had until like we just started getting like an import like messages and like photos. Like I actually have some here. Like this, like people were like they're like pre-prom photos. They were just like representing bro tips there. People were dressing up as bro tips for Halloween. Like it was just absurd. Like I can't even imagine. And so yeah, everything was pretty much Gucci until the second hack happened. And this was the big one. This one was a big deal. This one actually really wasn't a hack either, but it was like we had a partner that I'm not gonna name him or his company. His name is Saif Al-Tamimi, and his company's called Note Wagon, and I hate that guy. And he can sue me if he wants to, I really hate that guy. And so we partnered up and we were like, okay, so you can post ads, or we'll post ads for you on our page, and then you'll have like Brotip on your page. And I tried to keep it cool, and I tried to keep it like relevant. I wanted to advertise without people realizing that they were being advertised to, because like nobody responds to like ads, like they don't care. And he didn't like that. He wanted them to be like straight up ads, and he wanted like 5 ads a day on the Facebook page, which is actually absurd. And so he had access to all of our stuff. And one day, instead of like, he didn't like call me and like want to talk it out, he just said, whatever, I'm just gonna nuke it, and just like changed all of my passwords and just like completely locked me out. Like for 2 weeks, I was just locked out of all of my accounts, while he and his friends were like, to make it seem like there's nothing wrong, like they would like make their own bro tips, which was just total garbage. Like they just posted their own bro tips. And I wish I had them say like they deleted everything, like cause when we said we were gonna sue them, but like they were really bad. Like it was like bro tip, like if she doesn't kiss you after the date, that's not one for you, bro. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Like that's the bro tips they posted. And yeah, so the way we got back was actually pretty crazy. Like they weren't interested in talking it out. They were just gonna like keep the website. And like the guy was like bragging to his friends. Like he's like, yeah man, like I like scammed some website off of like some black kid from America. He's a Canadian, by the way. I forgot to mention he's Canadian, which doesn't make it worse, but it almost makes it worse in a way. It just gets me for some reason. And so he's like, yeah, I like scammed this website off this kid from America. I'm like, like I'm gonna like, it's my website now. And one of his friends like actually like hit me up on Facebook, and he was like, yeah, I don't know why you like are messing with this, or I don't know why you're messing with this guy. He's kind of a crook, and he's always been a crook. And but I know how to like get under his skin, and I'll meet up with him personally, and I'll like get everything taken care of for you, just because I hate to see this go down like this, because it's happened to me and I don't like it. And so his friend, or like his former business partner, like met up with them and they talked it out, and he still really wasn't ready to give it back. And I managed to get into the Tumblr long enough to make a post like, hey, whatever you read here isn't me unless it comes from my Facebook, like add me. And I just like posted my Facebook link on the Tumblr because like for some reason they could always change the Tumblr password back even after I got it back. It was really weird. And so I made people add me on Facebook and told them that this is where Brotip news will come from now on. Like don't look at our sites, don't look at our Facebook or anything. Like it'll come straight from me. And who here knows what Reddit is? Who here knows what 4chan is? Okay. So a lot of kids on Reddit and 4chan that were fans of Brotips saw the post and they're like, we gotta organize, man. We gotta mobilize. We gotta do something about this. And you know what always happens with that. So like, I got a post from this kid. Like they use like a lot of like code words and like it's like weirdness. And so I got a Facebook message from this kid who was like, I was sit from anonymous. And I was like, that's cool, man. And he was like, they wanted me to tell you that marble cake is on your size. And I was like, that's cool, man. And he was like, and I was like, tell him I said thanks. And he was like, are you aware of marble cake? And I was like, yeah, I'm very aware of marble cake. Don't worry about that. And he was like, oh, sweet, he's one of us. And like, he went back to his website. And they're like, cool, we're going. And I didn't tell them to do this, so don't hold me legally accountable for this. But they sent the dude a bunch of like fake lawyer emails, like if you don't give it back, we're gonna sue you. I represent Mr. Barfield. Like hundreds of like all these lawyer emails, and, like cease and desist that they just made in like Microsoft Word. Like, it was crazy. And that dude was like hitting me up on Facebook. He's like, nah, man, don't sue me, man. So I'm like, I don't have a lawyer, dude. Joking. And so he like just gave it back just out of like pure fear of like these like kids on 4chan. I was like, you're an idiot, dude. And so he like gave me all my stuff back. And I was so appreciative of the guy, his former friend helping me. I was like, yo, let's just be partners, man. Like just come work for me. And so yeah, I met my business partner, which was cool because at the time I had like no experience with business. I was just like kind of like a writer, like a blogger. And he was kind of like the business half of Brotips. So let's talk about Brotips, the company. When I met my partner, we actually formed Brotip Inc. I wanted to call it Brodois Inc. I can't spell, and so I ended up with Brotip, and which worked out because they're like, oh, this is cool. It's like French. It's like water. It's like cool. It's cool. And so we formed the company. This is when everything pretty much picked up on the business end. That's when we got our Red Bull and HarperCollins. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're kind of like Penguin publishers, but they're like the other ones. We made deals with them. We started doing a lot of other ventures. We started to like branch out, and so we did like a lot of club promoting. As you see, we did Haunt-Lanta at I think that was at Primal. That was like Haunt-Lanta 2011. It was crazy. It was literally the biggest costume party in Atlanta that year, and it was just ridiculous. That guy was Shufflebot. Do you remember LMFAO? Remember when that happened? That was weird, man. That dude was Shufflebot from the video, and which was totally unrelated to my costume. It was a weird coincidence, but I was the guy from LMFAO that year. And I was like, it's freaking Shufflebot. Like, what's up, dude? Like, we should hang out after this. And so we started promoting. We did a lot of stuff. We launched Brotips apparel. We had the official Brotips t-shirts. We had like the hoodies. We partnered up with C, which I mentioned earlier, Zishan and David Barron. He goes to UNC, but yeah, he goes to UNC. And they actually own a pretty cool company, started out of Emory, that basically sold snapback hats. And they would give, like, all the proceeds went to charity, and whoever they partnered with, like whether it be like say a college or like a sports team or whatever, whoever they partnered with would like pick the charity. And so we chose teen or like anti-teen suicide for our charity to donate to, and released like the first edition official Brotips snapback hats. And this was really cool because kind of like a really fun fact about me. My sister dated the cameraman of Waka Flocka Flame, and C is also managed by Waka Flocka's mom, who is his manager. And so we got together, we actually made the connection to Waka to get Waka's own C hat. So that's me and Waka chilling, me wearing the Brick Squad's C cap. It was just like crazy, like everything happened like really fast. And then that, which is what everybody knows about Brotip. If you know anything about Brotips, is that Brotips was invested in by Mark Cuban. He like owner of Dallas Mavericks, HDNet, Shark Tank Star, etc. And when that happened, Jesus Christ, when that happened, like that was it, dude. Like, if you didn't know, like, a lot of my, like, the Brotip's fame wasn't at Emory, it was everywhere else. But when that happened, that was when it was like, boom, instant campus celebrity. Actually, I made a graph for all you like ISOM kids. I made a graph that shows like my popularity after Mark Cuban invested in Brotip, and it just goes straight up. There's no variability, it's just straight up. And if you're into that, I actually made a formula to kind of help out to show you how I did the math. And that's key popularity was like, this is how I measure my popularity. X is the amount of X's that text you. the other X is like the coefficient based on how late at night they text you. Times the amount of likes on your current Facebook default photo, divided by the amount of time you've had it up, all to the power of outgoing text over incoming text. And yeah, I don't know, it was just crazy. We had a lot of fun. Like, Jamie Foxx was like sharing Brotips on like Facebook. Like, Tupac is apparently alive. He was sharing. Tupac Shakur himself was a Brotips fan, which is crazy. So much fun. I was in Empire magazine, which like it was a startup magazine out of Emory. That picture's ridiculous, but it's funny. That's my guy Ed. I don't know if you guys know Ed, but he's another startup guy. When we were actually doing that photo shoot, and like the photographer is my friend JR, and some kids came over and they were like, "Oh, what do you got? Like, what are you shooting for? What's this? What are you taking pictures for?" And I was like, "It's Brotips." And they were like, "Wait, like Brotips? I was like, "Yeah, I made Brotips." And like I don't know, like that's like our thing, the Brotips beat. But you know, like it's actually like a pretty serious thing because when you do something like that, it's like something that's like has cultural significance and like it's supposed to be funny, but like a lot of people actually like put a lot of stock into. Like you kind of have to like make a trade-off. You kind of have to like pick between like things like I even said right here, like things I find funny and things that I find to be true. So like. Where does it start and where does it stop? Like me saying things are like relevant and things are like socially responsible versus like things that I just kind of think are like a joke, things are like a gag. And so like the older that Brotips got, like the more attention and feedback that I got, like the tips changed in tone a lot. Not one way or another, just kind of like all over the place. And because there were like kids who like send us messages like, "Yo, I really do live my life like by Brotips." Like I really do, like that's my Bible, dude. So like I can't just like post, I can't just be like, whatever man, ditch school, steal cars, you know, like that can't be a Brotip. Like it has to be something that actually means something to somebody. And so like there are a lot of tips that just weren't funny or like a lot of people didn't like because like I actually wanted to try to like inject some kind of like message in there. And like the variability of like the tone and the tips like turned a lot of people off because they came expecting one thing. Like I had a friend that didn't even know that I made Brotips. Like she just like went to it, and she heard the name Brotips and thought it was gonna be like bro, you know, I thought it was gonna be like kind of like Friday, and then it turned out to be what it actually was, and she was actually a little disappointed because she kind of wanted it to be written by like, I mean, I am an asshole. She wanted to be written by a different kind of asshole, you know, and she didn't like that it was trying to send a message, and yeah, like it actually turned a lot of people off due to what I call the Drake effect. The Drake effect is when people who like one side of your personality more want to believe that's all you are, and that the sides of you that don't like are fake. Now, if you know Drake makes like ignorant music, but then he makes like kind of like softer music like for the ladies. And so people who like to hear like ignorant Drake, like worst behavior Drake, you don't want to hear like Drake singing like Janae Aiko, you know, or Aiko. Like you want to hear like what you like. And you say, oh, he's faking that, that's not really him. Or if you think that Drake is soft and then he makes like a hardcore song and you're like, oh, he's fake, that's not really him. And that's kind of like what happened with Brotips. Like whenever we made a tip that was like really like positive or like social or like had a message, she was like, oh, whatever, that's not really Brotips. Like that was submitted by a fan or like a girl wrote that is what people would usually say, oh, a girl wrote that. Or like if you read a tip that was like really like kind of like irreverent, that was just me kind of goofing off making a joke, and they'll be like, oh, like, who wrote this? It must not be the Brotips guy, because they didn't want to believe that I could be both. But it really does, like, beg the question, like, is that, like, my burden to bear? Like, is it Brotips' place to bear that responsibility and, like, be those guys? Like, are we the brand to stand up for that, like, social issues or whatever? Or should we just kind of like goof off and do whatever we want? And if we do goof off and do whatever we want to stay neutral to things that are actually serious, are we being part of the problem? And I had to like ask myself, like, was I like subconsciously trying to be too social and like too responsible just to kind of like shake off the stigma of the whole like bro thing? Because we're often labeled as like a website just for bros instead of like a website trying to redefine what a bro is. And so because of this, we actually like dedicated our like 100th tip to like it's sort of like a golden rule to like say like, well, we're not like a men's advice website. Like we're like for everybody. Like this is like anybody can be a bro. Like we don't care. Like don't try to make it. Don't try to put it in the box. You know. And what you'll notice when you're doing your thing, like whatever when you leave today, like whatever you make, there'll be like a lot of naysayers. People who like one don't know what you did to get here, and two like didn't do what you did to get here. Like they'll try to say that they could have done it better than you did it. Or like they'll say like you did it the wrong way. Like I mean like personally like my whole thing with this is that like my family's like super poor. My family's like really like dirt poor. And I came to Emory on like a bunch of like scholarships and grants and stuff like that. And like if you're poor at Emory, like you're kind of in a minority because like a lot of people do like kind of lean on their parents or like you know, like mom's an executive or dad has a credit card or whatever. And I was like super salty about that for like a really long time, you know, because I kind of felt left out. But you kind of have to know what your disadvantages are, and you can be salty about it, or you can like use what you do have to like build a platform to stand on. Or you can do both. Like honestly, you can do both, whatever. So there I was faced with all the negativity, trying to figure out if Brotip had indeed run his course. If I was trying to be too serious with it, or like whatever, was I wasting my time? And then I started reading our message backlog on Tumblr. That I never checked the messages. I was like, I had like really bad like anxiety about checking messages because I was like, because you know sometimes like it was like kill yourself, you know, like I don't want to do that. And so like, I lost track of it. Like in all like the chaos, like Brotip just grew way too fast, and I just kind of just lost track of it. And so like one day I went back and read the messages, and they were just stuff like this. Like this dude being like, Brotip saved my life. Like, what? You know? Like, it helped me get through some rough times. This person's like, your page is like, I have one of my favorites. Like, I follow you on everything. I recommend you everywhere I can. Like, keep it up. I can't wait for more. Some people took it a little too far. I fucking worship you. That's a little too far. I didn't respond to that one. I was like, that's cool. Your blog is literally the one thing that gets me through life. Literally, my blog. Like, you know, so, you know, you're so funny, etc., etc., etc. Like, I'm glad that it's good advice and not just jokes. And so it's messages like that that kind of like reaffirmed, like that I was doing the right thing by like trying to keep both sides represented. This is a really long one. I'm expecting you might have read this, but basically this person said like, we try to post some bro tips on each other's lockers every day at school. Teachers have no idea why we do it, but it just keeps everything nice and chill and positive. So I think we made a pretty good impact there. And in fact, like I kind of wanted to go back and correct some of my past mistakes with the brand, and so we did the Reset initiative, which was the replacing every shitty effing tip initiative for bro tips, which is when we let people like submit tips that they thought were just like really, really bad, like exceptionally bad. And we would just go back in and just take them out and just like replace them with something that was like actually good, that people liked. We replaced 10 tips in total with that, which was kind of like a really good step in the right direction to put together a complete package, because what we were actually looking at was selling bro tips, which is probably like, they say like, what do they say, like death and like weddings and moving are like the 3 most stressful things that people go through. Selling your company is probably like above all of that. Like, it is so stressful. And so we went back, cleaned up, made sure all of our partnerships were like tied up and everything. And like long story short, we eventually sold Brotip to Woven. A lot of people don't know what Woven actually is when I say the name, because they kind of operate in the background of a lot of people. This is Woven. They own the Chive, they own us. Bro Bible, which is awkward that they own both of us now because we're like mortal enemies. They own Rollstar, they own DatPiff, they own like a lot of like culturally like relevant websites. And Brotips is actually operated by this guy named Brandon now, who's like a former Bro Bible editor. I don't know if you've looked at Brotip lately, but they're a lot different than they looked when I ran it, which I haven't written Brotip for probably like a year and a half. Let's see. Yeah, and what's next for me? I'm a senior. Actually, at Emory Gozetta, I switched away from pre-med because fuck that, whatever. and so like, I'm actually a senior at the business school, which is like a way better fit for me. And I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, you know, because I've been doing freelance for a long time. I've been helping out with a lot of like local startups, a lot of not local startups. I've been doing like some medical technology. I've been doing a little bit of some other like accelerators. And I'm just trying to find out what the best fit for me is right now. I'm not really thinking about as far as jobs go. I just want to be where my presence is the most helpful and just kind of like bounce around and just help everyone that I can, give back to the community, because a lot of people helped me when I first got started. I really want to give back. I mean, I love this school. I love Atlanta, so I'll be around. I mean, if you need me, like if you want to like talk to me, like I have my contact info right here. Like anybody can email me. I mean, I didn't put my number up there or whatever. You can like Twitter, LinkedIn, like literally whatever. Just like hit me up, ask me questions, hang out. Let's work on your project. Let's do whatever. And takeaways for you is your attitude is almost everything. Like so much of a company or like a startup or an app or whatever you want to do is like what you do with it. And if you let people tell you that it's like not shit, then it's like not shit, you know. So you really do have to like take what you have and make something out of that. Also, your motivations are very important. Like I don't mean motivation, I mean your motivations. Like what makes you do what you're trying to do right now? Like is it money? Like is it? I mean it can be money. Like it can literally be money. Like is it like fame? Do you want to make something of yourself? Do you want to prove somebody wrong? A lot of what I do is like pure spite. Like I'm 5'7", I got made fun of in high school. A lot of what I do is be like, fuck you, I'm the shit now. One or two things. And have you guys seen the 4 chairs trick before? I was gonna do this live in front of you, but somebody's bound to get injured and I don't want you guys to get sued, I don't want me to get sued. And so I'm just gonna show you a video of the, yes, I'm gonna computer. Yeah, I'm going to show you a video of the 4 chairs trick and how it relates to this. Okay, good. Alright, we're good. Okay, there's this one. There's music in the list. It's fine. Okay, so see? Oh. Right here. Okay, so there are 4 chairs here. It might be kind of hard to see them, but think of each of these 4 chairs as like a motivation. You're going to see 4 girls, and think of each of these 4 girls as like a different person on your team or in your company, and they're each going to be motivated by something different. So they're all in the gym. Yeah, and so this is representing each of like what they believe in, kind of like supporting their interest in the project. But they also have to kind of depend on each other and not just like their own motivation. So what happens if each person gets their motivation taken out from under them? Like will the company like fail or? I like know how this Sims and it still stresses me out. Okay, so at this point, there's only one person that's still in it for their original reason. Like, this is like, so let's say like, you're not making any money anymore. Let's say nobody cares, like, you're not famous, nobody cares about you anymore, like, whatever. And only this person has like what you originally in this for. And everybody else is kind of just like depending on each other. That's what's gotta happen. at the end of the day, like if you're on a team, you have to depend on your team and not what you thought you were in this for. Oh man, that's so stressful. Tile floor, man, that's potentially disastrous. That's business, man. There's a tile floor under you, so if you fall, you're gonna die, dude. So you have to like make sure you guys are in it. It actually cut away from that video before they get out of it, so nobody knows how they got out of that or if they got out of that. Some say they're still in that square to this day. But yeah, man, that's actually it. So I hope you guys have a good time, and I hope you guys enjoy this talk.
Yeah, we can open up our Q&A.
Yeah, let's go. Bam.
So, could you tell me a little bit more about how you built your user base after you had your account? How you built it? Was it organic?
Oh, totally organic. We didn't advertise ever. Like there was no Brotip ads. It was just like it went from Tumblr. We made the Facebook and like post on Tumblr, like post on Facebook, and then people started. We posted on Facebook, people shared them on Facebook, and then we like did Twitter after that. We're like, hey, we're gonna post them on Twitter, so follow us on Twitter. And so depending on your preferred way of getting a tip, like they would follow us on wherever they wanted to follow us on. Yeah, anytime.
Can you talk about the time when Mark Cuban invested in your startup? What did he invest in exactly? Like, at what phase or stage of development was Brotip at? Like, what did he actually invest in?
At that point, we had very like minimal partnerships, and we were kind of just like business as usual with just posting tips. And we wanted to expand. So we were like pre-ventures, pre-expansion. We didn't like do parties, or we didn't do a lot of. We did like a little bit of like handmade merch, but not like a big merch and a big deal. And so we had them come on to give us enough startup costs to like do things that weren't free. We were basically operating everything free, like Tumblr, like Facebook, everything that was like a free platform. That's what we used. And so we got money from him in order to branch out. So it was like a really, really early phases. I want to say like the first like 6 months or so. We like just cold called him. We sent him an email. We sent him like an email with a media package that said, this is Brotip, this is what it looks like, this is who we are, et cetera, like give us some money. And he was like, sure, whatever. Can I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
How was Mark's, in terms of like First Amendment speech privileges, was he or his team kind of hesitant to, or make you pull some of the Brotips that they may have found offensive or may have not jived well with that?
They just let us do whatever we wanted pretty much. I mean, Mark Cuban as a person, I mean, have you ever seen Shark Tank?
I have, yes.
Like, you know how he's like an asshole in Shark Tank? He's like an asshole in real life. That's like not a character. It's not like Mark Cuban playing Mark Cuban. That's like how he is, you know. Like, but I mean, he's a good dude, and he's really like he knows what he's talking about, and that's why he's so like forthcoming with like the criticism, because he knows exactly what he's talking about. He's like just listen to me, and you'll be a success. Just kind of knock it out. And I've had like questions for him, like, hey man, like this is going wrong, what do I do? And he's like, figure it out. Like sometimes he doesn't tell me what to do. Like he kind of just let us like stand on our own legs. And so yeah, is that it? Or?
Yeah. Go for
Now, we heard about some of the things that based on like deciding to sell. Was it a pressure based on you looking to sell, or was it
selling was
your decision based on
yeah.
where why did you decide?
It was at that point Brotips have been active for I want to say 2.5 years, and it's essentially a meme. And so like that's a long time for like something something on the internet to be popular. And so we knew like our time, like the writing was on the walls, you know. And so we sold. I wouldn't even call it like a pressure so much as like I was tired of doing it. Everyone else was tired of doing it. We were tired of like fighting each other over it. Like we just wanted to move on to the next thing, whether it be school or like an actual job or whatever. And so we just decided to sell it because it was just like the best thing for everybody. I don't know.
Would you ever say that pressure made it hard for you to keep the Brotips true to what you really thought? And if so, how did you fight through
Yeah, man, because I was, on any given day, I was either accused of like being a literal girl or like being like a sexist, like on any given day, you know, because like I'm trying to keep it short and trying to keep it funny, but there's not really a lot of room to like fully explain what you're going for when you try to keep it so short and like kind of like catchy. And so sometimes the tips would come off wrong, rub somebody the wrong way, or like I remember one in particular. I had a tip about like how it's really suspicious when when you go out and meet somebody and like they just like have like a condom just like boom, like they were expecting to get laid, you know, so that's like a little suspicious. But the way it was framed, like, the tip made it sound like if you meet a girl and she has protection, she's a slut and you shouldn't sleep. You know what I mean? Like, so people were really mad about that, but that really wasn't what I was going for. And so I think I sort of overcompensated with a lot of the tips to make it clear, like, no, like I'm all about the social thing. I'm all about like freedom and like being, you know, like being like sexually free, and whether you're a girl or boy, do whatever you want. And like, you know, you don't have to shave. People want you to shave, whatever. Like, you know, like I'm all about that. And so like, when people would read the tips, like they would kind of get one side or the other, and very few people kind of got that, okay, this is kind of a complicated issue. You can't really represent your stance on the issue with like 140 characters, you know. So there's some pressure sometimes, but not all the time.
How do you think about like how the company has been now that you sold it?
Next question. No. It's going, man. It's going. They're getting what they want out of it, and that's all. I mean, what do you expect? You know, you sell it. They know that it has a big base. Like, it's not their main priority. Brotip was their main priority. Brotip and Jive pretty much. I guess we'll start to. And so they pretty much use the Brotip Facebook to advertise articles on other websites to actually make them more money. And so it's just like a source of views and clicks at this point. They post tips occasionally to keep it going. Every single tip has like, I can actually show you. Every single tip has like, they pretty much all have like branding on there. Like, I think the latest ones are sponsored by Klondike. And so like it'll say like bro tip number, whatever the tip is, and at the bottom it's just like, eat Klondike. Like, it's like plastered across the tip. Like, there's no internet, so I can't show you, but like it's bad, man. Like it's very obvious. There it is. So you see that?
Yeah.
You see that? That's what it looks like now. And like I have no problem with it. The dude that writes it, I'm actually like, I like that guy. Like, he's actually he's a pretty okay dude, but like, you know, it's just not what I would have done. I'll say that. It's not what I would have done, but that's what they wanted, and they're making money off of it. I have stock. Like, a lot of the selling it was like stock. I have stock in the company. As long as that makes them more successful, I'm happy with it. So, yeah.
Where did you like write them on campus?
Wherever I wrote them in my dorm room mostly. Like, whenever I would write them on campus, like somebody like walk up behind me and be like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "I'm doing bro tips." Like, "Why are you doing bro tips?" I'm like, I do bro tips. Like, "You do bro tips?" and so I just like kind of write them like in my room, and you know, occasionally or like eventually like leaked out that I was the guy before the marketing thing, and once the marketing thing happened, everybody knew. But I would try to keep it kind of like under lock because I didn't want it to be like me tips. You know, I wanted it to be kind of like an entity on its own, and not like them look at me or my Facebook or like my Twitter or whatever and like, this is the guy writing bro tips, or like, wow, this is the guy writing bro tips, you know. I wanted to kind of like speak for herself.
Was there like a polarizing moment that made you, I guess, more aware of your social impact, or is that just kind of like your personality in general? That
I mean, well, that was my personality in general. Like, I kind of grew up into that. You know, when you're like 19, you don't care. You know, like I don't whatever. But I kind of grew into a person that cared about social impact and like how, you know, like inequality and things like that, inequity. There was a polarizing moment like with bro tips where I decided to represent that in bro tips, and I was just reading like a lot of the messages and saying, hey man, this makes me feel really cool. Like, I feel like this is like a one-sided argument. I feel like they're like shaming me or whatever. And it's not that I wanted bro tips to be the kind of like social issue platform, but I did want to make sure people knew that like we are all about positivity and that everybody's accepted and like we're chill with everybody. Like, everybody's a bro, you know.
was it tough to kind of like find the right wording?
Yeah.
Some of the things, and you're like kind of second guessing or third guessing
Yeah,
the way
like
things are.
every day, like it was me like reading something, like showing it to like Jessica or somebody, like, hey, like, does this look cool? Like, somebody, not like, well, I didn't want to like defang it. I don't want to say, like, hey, I don't want to post it if it offends somebody. But it's like, as long as it's sending the right message. Like, if it's something that I really believe in, like, if it offends somebody, whatever. Like, that's what I was kind of like the basis of the thing. Like, be funny, be offensive, if you have to be edgy, be cool. But if it was something that was like sending the wrong message, I didn't want to post it. So I kind of wanted to make sure that it was going in the right direction.
All right, cool guys. Thank you so much for coming out for this. Everyone's trying to go to like the intro to coding workshop we have. It's in 231 right now with Tech Town South. So just get that up. Bring a laptop.